Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Glad you could be here with me today. I've got a book review for you today for the second book in the Dark Tower series, and so I'll get into that here in just a few minutes, but please remember to leave me some feedback on these videos. Let me know what you like and what you don't like. I've decided that with the Dark Tower series, I'm going to continue doing the reviews for each book, but it's going to be more of just a simple overview. I'll go into a little more detailed review once I've finished the entire series, because that will give me a more holistic view of what the whole series is like, and I can present that to you and why you should read it. So, because I already do think you should read it. But we'll get right into it. Stay till the end of the video, because I'm going to talk a little bit more about some decisions I've made for my book reading going forward. So make sure you stay till the end so you hear about that. Let's get right into it. So the book is The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King. It is the second book in the Dark Tower series. It picks up right after the end of the first book. And if you haven't read the first book, I won't spoil it for you, but essentially once that book ends, something happens, and Roland, the gunslinger, gets transported to a little bit different world. And in the beginning of this book, he wakes up on a beach, kind of delirious, not knowing where he is or what's going on, and there's these crab-like creatures attacking him. And I won't go into details there because it would involve some spoilers, but needless to say, he needs to get away from them as quickly as possible before they eat him. Just such a really interesting story. And the first book, even though I really enjoyed it, was a little bit slow. So I really enjoyed the pace of this book quite a bit more, and even though it was starkly different, and I mean really different from the first Dark Tower book, it was a good different. I really thoroughly just had so much fun. So he wakes up on this beach, and he after getting away from the creatures and everything and walking around for a bit, he notices this random door just standing alone by itself on the beach, not connected to any type of building, although it does seem to be hinged in mid-air some way, somehow or another. And the door says "The Prisoner" on it. And a little bit later on through the book, he finds another door and another door, and that really sums up what this book is actually about. When I first saw The Drawing of the Three, I'm like, okay, what does that exactly mean? But it is, as I mentioned in a previous video, it is a bit like tarot cards in the fact that he's these three doors that he encounters in this book are representative of drawing a card or encountering someone who is depicted on one of these cards. So there's the Prisoner, the Lady of Shadows, and the Pusher. And he has to go through these doors, complete a small quest, and rescue said person from their world and bring them into his. And it seems like he's essentially rebuilding the gunslingers, because he is the last of the gunslingers who are a bit like knights in his world. And so it's kind of like he's rebuilding his crew. You know, he's rebuilding the infantry of the gunslingers. He still has the goal of getting to the Dark Tower either by himself or with others to meet his destiny, but it's very, very intentional that he has to go through these doors, and he's the only one that can open them. No one else can open them. They are specifically for him. He has to go through the door, and it puts him in different time periods in New York City. And so a world that's completely foreign to him, both some of the words they use, the way they describe things. It's really comical in the book to see him interact with people from our day and time, or maybe roughly around the 80s, and some from the 1950s and 60s, because, he'll find words that they use and he'll say them, but he completely says them wrong because the way they sound to him is so foreign. He just does the best he can with saying what those words are, and it's really quite funny. I had a blast with it, seeing him, words that I know in commonplace language every day and I'm familiar with, but someone from his alternate world doesn't know, doesn't recognize. And even though technically a gunslinger from the Old West isn't that far removed from our day and time, in his world, that kind of Old West setting is not anything like ours was, with a few exceptions. He has the 6-shooters, he has the cowboy hat, he has the lawn jacket and everything like that. But otherwise it's nothing like our world. So yeah, I just found that really comical. Stephen King is doing a brilliant job of handling world hopping as well, because with the transition between Roland's world and our world, there are things that you expect him to do because it would make his outcome better. There are things that you would expect him to change in our world to make things better for him in his world, but he doesn't. And I thought that was really good because Stephen King understands the principle: if you alter things in one world, ultimately it's going to come back to bite you. And so I just thought that was handled really well. But it kind of puts you in that place as the reader of, what if he did this? It would change things where he is, but what kind of repercussions would that have in our world? So I thought that was handled really, really well. This is a series that, as I've said before, I'm hoping to finish this year. There's only 6 books left, so I do plan to finish the rest of the series, and I will let you know what I think as I get more into the series. But I do highly recommend you pick this up. The character work is magnificent. You really felt like you were getting to know these characters. Roland especially. Roland is much more nuanced than he was in the first Dark Tower book. And you get more of a window into what he was like, what his upbringing was like, how he became a gunslinger, and what really drives him, what his passions are, and what he's willing to do or not do to fulfill his destiny. And the characters that he encounters, like the Lady of Shadows, and the Prisoner, and the Pusher, are all part of helping him fulfill his destiny, but they each have their own nuances to their characters that impact the story in different ways. So I definitely highly recommend that you check this series out. I can expect there's more world hopping or dimension hopping, if you will, to be had in the forthcoming books. And I can't wait to read the remaining books, but I don't own them yet. And so that leads me to what I mentioned before at the beginning of the movie, some choices I've made in my reading plans for the rest of the year. Since we don't know how long we're going to be stuck at home, not being able to go many places other than grocery stores and things like that. Most of the bookstores are closed or making alternate plans to fulfill orders. and there's going to be shortages and long delivery times, I made the decision to try and finish some of the books on my TBR on Kindle. I do have a Kindle, and some of the books that I had planned to read for the rest of this year I already have on Kindle, so I'm like, well, maybe I won't buy them. I'll just not spend extra money and just read the one that I already have on my Kindle, or I will buy certain books in a series on Kindle as opposed to reading the physical book, even though I love physical books. But it's gotten to the point where that may not totally be practical for everything on my reading list. A lot of the books I already own on my bookshelf, but some I don't. So I've made the decision to buy those on Kindle and see how that goes. If that changes in the future, I'll let you know. But for right now, that is my plan. And it's kind of a good thing, too, because I can't really get another bookcase. I don't really have enough room for it. And as you can see, my bookcase is getting pretty full. I'm having to do different stacking routines and things like that for the books I own. So, yes, some of the books I still will read physical copies of, but some I will read on Kindle, and that applies to the Dark Tower. I think I'm going to purchase the rest of those on Kindle. So, I'll keep you posted. I hope to be reading more of the Dark Tower here very shortly, and I'll let you know what I think. Let me know in the comments, have you read the Dark Tower in its entirety, or have you only gotten a couple books in like I have, or maybe you haven't read it yet? Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments. Let me know if there's something that's been holding you back from reading it, and if you have read it, what your thoughts were, and what you liked about this book, if you have read this book, what you didn't like. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I do highly recommend this if you are a Stephen King fan, and also if you are a fantasy fan. This is not par for the course for Stephen King. He doesn't normally do fantasy, so he even said so himself, kind of in the prologue or epilogue to this book, I believe. So kind of a different arena for him to go into when he was writing this series, but so far I've been really impressed. He did a superb job. So if you're a fan of Stephen King, this is a no-brainer. You need to read this series. I will keep you posted on my further reading adventures in the Dark Tower world. And until our next video, please make sure to share this video with your friends. Like and subscribe if you have not. Click the bell if you want notifications. And I will talk to you guys in the next video. Remember to read more books. Take care. Bye.